So I have a little sample house here. Got a little foundation wall for a crawl space. I have a first floor, a second floor, and a roof. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a section view to it. So we're going to slice through the house and show some of the details. So in here, my 3D view, I have this section box open. And just to give you an idea of what our plan is I'm going to slice through the middle of the house and show the interior construction. That's what a section is for, is to show us how the interior of the house is put together, or the structure of the house within the walls or floors. So I'm going to go back to the first floor plan. I have no sections drawn, but I have some walls. I've got some dimensions. You can see that I have my walls properly drawn so that I have a core of stud, 2x6 stud. I have an inside face with gypboard, an outside face with wall sheathing, and some vinyl siding. You can see there it's called an exterior vinyl siding on 2x6 wood stud wall. Yours may be named differently, but it should have that basic kind of construction. So I'm going to cut a section through the short dimension. I'm going to left click up above the house and then left click down below so that you can see here as I click on the section view. These lines up and down basically show us what part of the cut is going to be shown parallel to it. So if I drag this back up, my section view is going to end here. So I only see this wall cut through. This wall down here isn't going to be viewed because I've brought my section view box up. This is the depth of the view. So this is how far away from this section plane do we actually see anything. If I extend it all the way out here, I will see all the way back to this foundation wall. I will see this interior wall on the first floor. I'll see this interior wall on the second floor. Let me show you what it looks like real quick. If I find my section over here. So section 1 now, I see this wall back in the distance, and I see this wall here, this opening here. Obviously my walls are a little high, I have to adjust that, but you can see all that interior detail. Let's go back up to the first floor and change that. So now I'm going to change it. So I'm going to bring this depth box in. So I no longer will see a wall here. I no longer will see my foundation wall. All I'm going to see now is this interior wall and the cut walls. Let's go back down here to the section. So you see now all I see here is this opening and this wall. This other interior wall is gone, and I don't see the foundation wall back in the distance. I'm going to reduce it even more, the depth of view here. I'm going to bring my depth box in so that I don't see anything. I don't see any of these interior walls. All I'm going to see is the exterior wall cut here, the exterior wall cut here, and the floor and everything else on this cutting plane. Only if I were to take a slice vertically through the house, I'm only going to see everything on this plane and back as far as this depth line will go. Which, as we go back to the section line, the section view, you can see it doesn't show a whole lot. No interior detail, just the construction of the walls, just the construction of the floors, just the construction of the roof. Bring the bounding box out so we see the entire house. I'm now going to start adding some details. So if I scroll in here, the first thing I see is I just see a bunch of single lines, which tells me that my detail level is not set at fine. It's probably set at coarse or medium. So I'm going to bring it to a fine level of detail. So I start seeing some of the construction. I see my floors. I see my 2x10 joists. I see my 3/4 inch sheathing for a total floor depth of 10 inches. I see I left space in here because I need a 1.5 inch sill plate. I'm going to put a 2x8 in here turned flatwise, and a 2x8 has an 1.5 inch height then when it's turned flat. I also see that the outside face of my foundation wall, so my core face, my foundation wall, exterior core face, matches the edge of my floor, matches the exterior core face of my stud wall up above, which is perfect because I'm going to really want to run all of this finished stuff, the exterior wall sheathing and the vinyl siding, down below where the wood construction stops and the concrete masonry construction starts, so that all of our elements will trickle down and drop off below the wood construction. But first of all, before I put in any of these detail items or change the wall look, I want to get rid of all this mess. I've got my first floor overlapping my top of foundation. So one of the things we can do, a little trick, is if I click on this line here for the foundation wall level and then click on this little break line, it jogs everything down a little bit just to clean up the text placement. I also want to bring this out a little bit. Why isn't it letting me do that? Oh, I got to grab on that little grip there. So we drag that out, leave some space. What I like to do is I like to bring my horizontal portion coming off of the level marker out so that it goes beyond the text itself. I might even want to do this to the first floor and jog that up a little bit, just so I don't have to be as drastic with bringing my foundation wall level down. And what I like to do is to make sure that all of these jogs or offsets line up. So it just looks a little cleaner. We don't have everything overlapping anymore. Now, one thing that's important is that you have your first floor level and your top of foundation wall levels set so that the gap between them, between your first floor and the top foundation wall, is correct for all of the geometry to fit. So we have a 1.5 inch sill plate we're going to put in. We have 9¼ inch joist, 2 by 10 is 9¼ inch, plus 3/4 inch sheathing, which means that we're going to have 11.5 inches between the top of foundation wall and the top of the first floor. It's critical that you have that space correctly indicated between your levels. Otherwise, the elements won't actually physically touch and you'll see a gap. And we want this to look physically the way it would actually be built. First thing we're going to do is we're going to bring this wall down. Now, my first floor wall, the studs will physically stop at the first floor. But for Revit to show it correctly, I'm going to actually bring this first floor down so that we set the base constraint of the first floor walls to the top of foundation wall, which clearly I have screwed up here because I must have dragged something. This needs to be at 4 feet still. So be careful that when you're moving all this, you don't actually drag the level. I believe the way I did that was not sure. I must have actually typed something in there by accident, but I want to make sure that we have everything at the right level. So I brought my first floor down, constrained at the top of foundation wall. I actually would like to come down a little more so that this finished stuff extends down past the top of the CMU crawl space wall. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to click on my first floor walls, and in addition to putting the base constraint at the top of foundation wall, I'm going to offset it -0 feet 1 inch down. So now I have some walls overlapping. We'll fix that later. I now have my finished material going down past the top of foundation wall, which is exactly what I want. Now I want to get rid of this intersecting wall space, both in the floor and on the foundation wall. So I'm going to come over to Modify and do something called Join Geometry. I'm going to say I want my foundation wall to consume the part of the first floor framing that intersects it. Well, my finished stuff doesn't intersect it, so it stays in place. It's only this gypboard and wall stud space that actually goes away, which is perfect. I want the full foundation wall, and I want the finish to extend down. We're going to do the same thing up here. We're going to click on the floor to consume the first floor wall that intersects with it, and now suddenly we have this nice finished face coming all the way down, all the finished material. We have our floor stopping at the outside face of wall stud. We have our first floor gypboard stopping at the first floor wall sheathing. Same thing for our studs. All we have down here is a little bit of visible gypboard, and there's nothing really in here to use the join geometry. So the way we're going to take care of that to get rid of this, which we don't want to see, is we're going to insert our sill plate. We're going to have a 2x8 sill plate, and it is a detail item. So we go up to Annotate and click on Detail in the Detail ribbon, the Detail panel, the component here. And we're going to look for, not inserted yet, so we're going to have to go Load in our Detail items, the wood and plastic division, wood framing. We're looking for a cut section, a nominal cut lumber section of a 2x8. So we go down, find the size 2x8, click OK, verify it appears 2x8, 1.5 inches by 7.25 inches is perfect. Okay, and we're going to rotate it so that it's flat. This bottom right corner is my control. I'm going to plop that down, lock it in, and you can see that it covered up that part of the wall that was still showing. So there's something called a masking box that's built into this detail item called nominal cut lumber, which is nice because typically it's going to overlap something, and we want the nominal cut lumber to be the item that shows up. We don't want that extra erroneous information like you can see here when I hover that piece of gypboard. But we also need a bottom plate for our wall up above, so I'm going to go back to annotate, detail component. I'm going to, I don't want a 2x8, I want a 2x6, doesn't exist, so I'm going to have to edit type and load. Going to come down here to detail items, look for wood and plastic, wood framing, nominal cut lumber in a section, and this time I want a 2x6. Okay, look up here, 1.5 by 5.5 is a 2x6, perfect. Again, bottom right corner, plop that down, and now our studs have something on which they can sit. We also need a rim board, something that kind of binds the ends of all these joists that are spanning, running in this direction. So if we were to look at the end of this wall through this end of this floor framing through this wall, we would just see the ends of a 2x10 every 16 inches. Well, we need something to close that in. So we have 2x10 joists. We're going to go get a 2x10 rim board component. I'm going to come up here. 2x6 is not what we want. We want to find a 2x8, 2x10. Sorry, there's no 2x10 installed, so we got to go load it. Detail items: wooden plastic, wood framing, nominal cut section. We want a 2x10. Okay, verify. Oh, it hasn't brought in 2x10. We got to go pull it down for some reason. 1.5 by 9.25. Perfect. Click OK. And this doesn't help us because we'd lock it into the outside, so I'll just rotate it 180 degrees with the space bar. Click up here and lock that in, and now we suddenly have a perfectly placed 2x10 rim board, a 2x6 bottom plate for our first floor wall, a 2x8 sill plate for our floor system. We have our finish coming all the way down, and that is exactly the way we want that to look. I also want it duplicated on the other side. So I'm going to go about doing that this way. I'm going to create a line right down the middle that I can use to mirror those elements, because I know my house is symmetrical and what I have over here needs to be over here as well. So I'm going to go to detail line. I am going to click down right at the middle of my floor, a vertical line, and I am going to come over and select these detail items. So control clicking to select multiple ones. I'm going to come up here to the mirror about an axis, click on my axis, and you'll see that they bring them over. I must not have picked my rim board, so I'm going to come over here to my rim board, also mirror that about the axis. Perfect. It's now installed. Last but not least, I want my first floor wall over here to also go down to the proper location. So I'll click on that wall. I'm going to change the base constraint here to top of foundation wall. That brings it down there. I'm going to offset it -1 inch down. Positive 1 inch down gives me -1 inch absolute. So I'm now an inch below, and again I'm going to have to come up here to join geometry, take the foundation wall to consume the wood, take the floor to consume the wood, right click and cancel, and there you go. All my detail items in the right place. The floor goes into the right place, sits on top of the sill plate, and we have our finished material extending down. So that is how to add some section information and get your levels correct up at the top of the foundation wall. Same kind of deal you're going to do if you have a second floor. At the second floor, you're going to have a double top plate, 2x6. You're going to have a rim board, 2x8 or 10, whatever floor you use. And you're going to have a bottom plate for your second floor wall. You're going to go ahead and do that on your own. It's the same concept. You can do it. Good luck. Happy Reviting.